Hi everyone, it's Duncan here again. Got a friend of mine, Beppy, who from explain.org, lives in Switzerland. He's got one of these DC Motors Plus cards that he uses to control his auto throttle, trim wheel, things like that. He's currently got it running in SciAC, and I've finally got around to updating my plugin so that the DC Motors Plus card works. So I thought I'd give you a quick demonstration of how it works. At the moment I've got a 5 volt DC power supply coming in. You can have, I think, anything up to 50 volts, but I think Beppy definitely uses 12 volts, but I'm just using 5 for this demonstration. Along here you've got 8 analog inputs, which I've got this potentiometer connected to number 1, 2, 3, to position 5, input 5. I've also got a switch connected to these, sorry, there's the outputs. Got a switch connected to one of the inputs. There's 10 inputs that you can have. So these are digital inputs and these are analog inputs. And there's also 4 motors. So I've got a little fan, 5 volt DC fan connected up to the motor. You've got some outputs here where you can, if you've got a 5 volt supply, you can turn on up to 8 outputs with 5 volts, or if you've got a 12 volt, it will put 12 volts here. So I've just connected up that to a light just to turn on when it's working, and I've got 2 servos connected up here. Beppy has his outputs connected up to some relays, so the relay has to be turned on before the motor gets turned on. Anyway, I've got data ref tool set up here, and these are the analog inputs. So 0 is not used, so this is analog input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I turn the encoder, the potentiometer, you can see the number changes from 0 to 255 down to 0, back up to 255. Now Beppy's using that to work out, he's got potentiometers to tell the position of the left and right throttle. So here I've got a switch, so it's currently off, and when I turn it on you can see that the digital input changes to a 1 in that position. And next I can turn on my motor. So you've got up to 4 motors, motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, motor 4, and when it's 0 the motor's in idle, and then you can go forward from a number from 1 to 127. So I'm going to go maximum forward. 128, again the motor just stops, and then from 129 to 255 it goes in reverse. Well, this is a fan motor, so I think it's a shaded pole motor, and it doesn't do reverse, but I'd put 127 in there. You can now see the motor zooming along at full speed. And shove it back to 0, and you can see the motor stopped. Okay, so if I want to turn on the output, it's a digital output. I've got it in the first one. Just make that a 1, and the light comes on, which means it's been turned on. So you could use that to turn on a relay if you wanted. 0 to turn it off. And I've also got servos So I've got two servos connected up. They're in positions. The first servo 1 and servo 4. So I'll put them in 512, which is, so the range for a servo is from 0 to 1023. So 512 is halfway. They were already in that position, so if I just change them both to, I don't know, 700, I should see them both move. Yep. And if you put them back to 0, that's like, supposedly it means that you can manually move them. It turns them off and they stop. At the moment they're humming. Put it to 0 and they go quiet. Yeah, so basically that's how the DC Motors Plus card works. And I'm in the process, so Beppy's in the process with me of converting his SciAp script over to Xlua. And this is just the this is what we're actually using to get his trim wheel working. So it's basically reading the trim wheel value from the Zibbo mod, which is that data ref there, B738 data ref trim wheel. And it's like it's the number that goes negative, and it goes up to about 1 and goes down to about negative 0.5. Basically all I'm interested in is which way it's moving. So what I'm basically doing is, after it's gone through this code, it's setting up the previous value of the trim wheel to what it is now, and then basically if the trim wheel is not the same, it's less than what it was previously, then he tells his motor to go forward at speed 50, or sorry, to trim down at speed 50, and it turns on the relay 2 into position with value 1. So that basically activates the relay and tells the motor to go forward at speed 50. If the trim wheel's increased, it's greater than what it was, then you're trimming up, and again it puts 180, which basically makes the motor go backwards. So it's basically 127, 128, so it's about 50. It's about 50 difference, but anyway, like I said, 129 to 255 moves the motor backwards. So the value he wanted was 180, and it turns on the relay so that the power can get to the motor. And then if the trim value hasn't changed at all, so you stop using the trim switch, the motor will be turned to 0. It stops it turning, and the relay is turned off by turning it to 0. So yeah, he's tested that already and it's working fine. So there you go. I hope that's of interest to you guys. See ya.